This is Canon Fodder, episode 16. My guest this week is a Twitter author, shitposter, and Upright Citizens Brigade member, Adem Reinspects. Adam, how are we doing?
Doing very well. I'm honored to be here with T.R. Hudson, the editor of the Double Dealer magazine. I was just earlier today, I was walking around the Arcadia Country Club, looking at some of the gorgeous bald cypress trees. They kind of sway in the wind near the golf course. And I saw some beautiful bombshell divorcees reading the magazine. So that was very nice to see.
We have the most beautiful readers. It's true.
Yeah.
So, and, I wonder, do you know what the Upright Citizens Brigade is?
I'm not familiar.
It's a improv troupe in New York City, and their thing is they'll teach you how to be funny. But it's kind of a scam. Anyway, so for like the 5 people who know about that, that's going to be really funny for them. And my listenership isn't that wide, so
yeah.
For all you fans out there, that was for you.
Well, speaking of being funny, we have, I think, one of the funniest authors I've ever read is who we'll be talking about today.
Yes. So Ketchup by Sam Pink. Why did you choose this book? Because when I first reached out to you on Twitter, you first suggested Polya. I said, I want to stick to fiction if I can. And then your next pick was Ketchup by Sam Pink, who I'm going to tag in this post, by the way. And hopefully he and I can become friends.
Yeah, I would like to be friends with him as well. He seems very cool. So I'll ramble. Can I ramble?
Oh, of course. This is a rambling podcast.
Lovely. Okay, so why did I choose Ketchup by Sam Pink? The first lame reason is just I saw you were doing like Brothers K and fucking all. I was like, he would maybe appreciate a slightly shorter read, for this one. I assumed like you're maybe busy, you're going on a trip to Portland, you're reading these, 18th, 19th century 1,000-page books. Maybe we'll do a little bit of a quicker one. But the other reason why I chose it, I've been a big Sam Pink fan really since I was pretty young. I started reading his stuff because he's been around for a while. He started, I think, releasing, the first notable book I know about is Person, which came out in like 2011. So I'm in my early mid-20s. I read some of his stuff when I was in like middle school. And it was the first like alternative literature I'd ever read. So it was the first not kind of school assigned or like the Lightning Thief type of book, that I read pretty young, some of his stuff. So I've been a big fan for a while. And what I love about Sam Pink, why I think he's such a great writer, is I feel his personality so clearly when I read his stuff. So there's a through line, I feel like, through all his books, even when he goes through these different areas of the country, different jobs, different situations, different topics. The thing that shines through in all his books so clearly to me is just his sense of humor, his like tone, the little strange like catchphrases he almost forms as he's talking about things that kind of repeat throughout the book. And he was very influential on me. I would say I kind of plagiarized from him more than anyone else in my own writing, where I like the idea of this kind of thought pattern style writing, autofiction, right? I guess is just what I'm describing, where as you're reading it, you feel like you're almost in their head. You're tapping into this kind of play-by-play, as life is hitting them wave by wave, as the hits keep coming, as he says in this book. And the other thing I like about him a lot is he's a very observant writer. And I feel it shines through the most even in this book, Ketchup, where he just has no agenda. I read his stuff and I never feel like someone's trying to sell me something or they're trying to put in some metaphor or they're trying to lead me with some carrot on a stick towards some academic kind of socio-political conclusion they want to subconsciously put in my head. I feel he just tells it to me straight. He has no agenda. He sees the world the way it is. And that is a rare thing because I think, you'd agree with this, like on both sides, quote unquote, people are trying to depict, there's an effort now in almost all fiction to like depict reality with an agenda,
Mm,
so that you can sort of further some kind of, it's very weird, so that you can like use the art to create the world you want to see or something, which
right.
maybe
Yes.
that can work. I'm not saying that can never work or it can't be art, but there's something comfortable about Sam Pink to me where I never even question if he's doing that. I just feel he gives it to me straight. So those are some rambling reasons.
No, definitely. And I've kind of railed against that myself, where especially in, let's say, mainstream publications. And I remember I took a writer's workshop, and the woman leading it, because it's like almost always a woman, which, neither here nor there, I guess, except
Hmm.
I'm a he-man woman hater, I guess. But she said one of the things that's important about writing fiction is putting out what you'd like to see in the world. And that's stuck with me for a long time, and not in like a this is so profound, I'm going to make this my philosophy, but in a that's fake and gay and cringe, and I
Right.
regret paying money for this kind of thing.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
it's true that reality has, let's say, it's shaped by our own perceptions, right? But at the same time, to propagandize to people, to and it's funny because I did a recent episode with our friend Cap from the Sidebar podcast,
Yes,
uh,
beloved Cap. Shout out Cap. Yeah.
and we were discussing Robert Heinlein, who his whole oeuvre of work, let's say, is him trying to sell his readers on his super awesome, sexy libertarian future,
Hmm.
you know. And I guess with enough distance and enough time, that can come off as quaint, right? But I imagine if I was living that and I had held the opinions that I do now, I'd be like, this is fake and gay and cringe.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's an interesting thing because part of me doesn't mind it when the artist is explicitly dream creating, when they're explicitly, constructing a world that they want. So, I've always been a fan of Wes Anderson, despite
Mm.
the haters. I've always
No, I
enjoyed
love
his
I
stuff.
love Wes.
Yeah, I've always loved him. I feel like in some ways, he gets shit on because everyone else started doing what he created. I
Right.
feel like he invented this whole thing he does, and then everyone else started doing it, and then he feels weirdly derivative, even though he's the guy who gave birth to it. But anyway, I feel like with him, it's so clear that he's not trying to show you what reality is. It's so clear that he's like this little kid who dreams of a world that's different. He dreams of a world where, you know, this like whimsical kind of musical pacing, like is the metaphysics of the entire reality, and where it's like a beautiful thing that he just kind of projects this out and maybe hopes that the world will be more like that. But there's never a moment where he pretends that he's showing you reality and then lies to you, which is what I feel a lot of especially progressive media does today. They
See, I'll push back
pretend,
on that a little bit,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because Wes Anderson, yes, his worlds are fanciful, right? But his characters are human. He never breaks the laws of humanity, let's say. Most of his characters are flawed individuals, even like doubly so for his protagonists most of the time. They're never perfect. They're
Mm-hmm.
never like they live in this fanciful perfect world, let's say, but they themselves are grounded in our reality,
Mm-hmm.
which I
No,
think
I
helps
completely
make
agree.
helps
Yeah.
make the aesthetic work. Just quick question: what is your favorite Wes Anderson film?
Oh man, I have a real, and if you've read my book or looked at it like at all, you'd know it's Rushmore.
Uh,
Rushmore has a
that makes
real.
sense.
My book is even a little bit of like the setting is ripped right out of Rushmore. I mean, it takes place at a prep school.
Mm,
It's about this kind of middlingly successful sort of loser, in his senior year. Rushmore, I saw also around that age, like when I was 15, 16. So that one has a real soft spot in my heart. I'd say his best work is probably maybe the Royal Tenenbaums. I would say is maybe his best stuff. Um, but I like them all, except honestly, kind of the last one. Asteroid City did lose me a bit. What'd you think of that one?
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen that or The French Dispatch. I think the last film of his. Well, I started French Dispatch on a plane.
Can't
Excuse
watch
me.
an Anderson on a plane. That's
No, I
tough.
know. Yeah, but it was. So I started it and I got like through the first sort of section, the one with what's his name, the prisoner, and he's stripping his guard.
Right.
Uh, there, that's a fun word, by the way, stripping. Uh, and it was fine, and I've heard Asteroid City is fine. I do wish that he would kind of branch out a little bit because he's clearly established his aesthetic and he's
Mhm.
clearly established his brand, but now he needs to kind of do something outside of that. And I'm just some dude on the internet who likes his film, so he can kind of do whatever he wants. He could even just stop making films altogether. Uh, it's funny that you say that Tenenbaums is his best film because that's also what the second film that he made.
I think third only because there's that one bottle rocket that's
Oh,
sort of
right. Yeah. It's like
early.
a
Yeah.
student film, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Uh, I think Steve Zissou is my favorite,
Hmm.
and I'd say that Grand Budapest Hotel is probably his best film. Certainly, it was his most successful.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I could see that totally. Yeah.
but
But
I
yeah,
guess that
he's I think even in the way I think you're completely right, even in how he depicts tragic, flawed, kind of miserable people often. He's not it's still there's no joke here that like this is a realistic. I guess I don't know how to explain it, but even when he's portraying real aspects of humanity, it's very clear that the way he's showing it to you, it only would exist in his world.
right,
It has this extra kind of fantastical element, right? But he's never trying to pretend that, like in Royal Tenenbaums, like there's no part where the behavior of like the Owen Wilson character is meant to be like an actual critique of the behaviors of white men or something.
right,
You know what I mean?
right.
Because
Yeah,
you don't even attach a social commentary to it because you know that these characters are so embedded within his mythology. But I agree with you completely. The emotions and the flaws are real. They are real, and that's why you relate.
have you read Old School by Tobias Wolff?
No, I've never heard of it.
I think you'd like it. It's about boys at a prep school,
Okay.
and
I was
and they
thinking,
have
is this the novel that the Will Ferrell movie is based on for a second?
no, no, no,
Yeah.
no. It's basically this guy Tobias Wolff. He went to a prep school, or he's writing about a prep school rather because most of his work is autofiction. I don't think this one is,
Hmm.
but he goes to a prep school, and the gimmick of this prep school, let's say, is that every month or so a famous author comes and speaks to them because it's like a world renowned, like think like Exeter or something like that.
Mm.
So they have Robert Frost come, Ayn Rand makes an appearance, and then Hemingway's supposed to make an appearance, and it's like this big thing. And whoever writes like the best essay gets to have like a one-on-one conversation with them. It's decent book actually. I
Mm.
think it won an award, maybe, or was nominated at least, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, I would definitely check that out. Yeah, yeah. The
But
setting of like the prep school is both interesting to me personally because I experienced it, and also because to me, those types of smaller charter or private schools, with some kind of uniform, some kind of like chant or song that the school sings. They're like the last kind of vestigial remains of a kind of feeling of community and identity and belonging that I feel many people are missing.
Yes.
Yeah, so I
You
do
got
tend to eat shit
you
like
got
that up. Yeah.
guys who play sports. Oh, lost you there for a second,
Yeah,
but
I lost you
back.
too, but yeah, I can hear you.
All right, cool. Your profile pic went away. I'm just gonna edit this part out later, so we're good.
Cool.
It never stopped recording, so we are all good. What are you calling in from Iraq?
Basically, yeah.
All right, so Ketchup. So Sam Pink is very interesting, and I kind of explained to you at the beginning. One of the problems I foresaw with talking about this book is that it's it's very stylized, and I'd say a majority of the substance is not only Pink's style, which is unique and engaging, and definitely pulls you in as a reader, but also it is, like you were saying, the observations that he makes, the way that his mind works, right? And that's hard to kind of talk about without going over every single uh little thing that he says. Like there's one part where he coins the catchphrase, he's hot rodding at pops. He says that several times, and that just means that he's a fry cook, but he also does everything else. you know or what was it? I picked this out because I really like it. I want to start saying it myself. It's he's dying in the nightmare,
Dying in the nightmare. Yeah.
instead of living the dream.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. It is hard to talk about. And that's why I like the challenge of it a little bit, because I feel that part of why it's hard to talk about is that when you read a work that is stylized and autofictional and very subjective, right? A book that isn't launching big ideas at you necessarily that you can talk about, you're forced to go into a little bit of your own subjective reaction to that author's, subjectivity. So, like, for example, reading this one, um, like early on, like the hot rodding thing, right? My experience reading that, and why I love Pink stuff, is the lesson or the idea I get from it, and this kind of carries through with me throughout the day, is like, he even says this in the book. He says, I'm literally flipping burgers. Like when you're in high school and you fail a test, like your teacher will say, do you want to end up flipping burgers one day? It's the joke of like the worst job you can end up doing.
Right.
But and this could have been a book. I think of other autofictional writers I've read where he analyzes or exposes the drabness of modern life and being a burger cook, and like talks about how there's just it makes references to, I'll never own a home, and I can't meet a girl, and like it could have been this very depressing, I'm going to do this kind of nihilistic thing about the dead ends of a white guy who didn't go to college or doesn't have professional credentials or something. But the way he writes, it's fun. Like you're saying, you are in his head, and just the coolness of his attitude, the sort of like zen optimism of the way he goes about the day is kind of infectious. So the hot rodding thing, he's like, I turn the stove a little too hot. He's like, that's my thing. It's a little too hot, and it's high risk, high reward. Maybe I'll burn a couple burgers, but like I'm getting them done quicker,
Right.
And there's like, I'll read something like that, and then later on the day when I'm doing shit in my own life that's boring or kind of uninspired, it's like addicting. You sort of start thinking of these little ways to just live life, I guess, a little bit more consciously, like a little bit more playfully, a little bit in a funnier way, than you would otherwise. What do you think about that?
Oh, definitely. And I think it's also so relatable, because
Hmm.
I'd say that my life is pretty mundane. I wrote in that Portland piece, I don't recall off the top of my head if I cut it out, but it was a good line, uh, that sometimes the most exciting part of my life is speeding through yellow lights.
Yeah, I love that line. Yeah, and you say it right afterwards. You go, "Yeah, I'm not the most interesting guy."
Right. But it's like you kind of have to make your own fun in a lot of
Hmm.
ways, because there is a lot of mundanity if you are just, and I never claim to be anything other than just kind of a regular guy. You
Mhm.
know, I know people who are extraordinary and they live extraordinary lives, but they themselves would say, "Yeah, that's pretty ordinary for me." And even they get bored with things that I would find fascinating, and they have to play these mind games themselves. You know, um,
Totally. And if sorry if I'm interrupting, but what I loved about your piece is that it gave me that same feeling. Like I'm reading it, and it's the same thing where I don't feel I'm necessarily being lectured at. I just get to be in your head for a while. And there were a few moments that just stuck out in such a real way because number one, they're relatable, and number two, they get me thinking about, yeah, like that is where you find the angle or the adventure. Like I loved where you're in Powell's, the bookstore. I'm assuming it's Powell's. I've been there
mhm.
too. And you're like, I'm gonna look for this weird book. I'm gonna arrange this little scavenger hunt for myself, of a book I don't think will be in here, but maybe will be. Or the line that I just related to so much was, you write, I got it pulled up here. You're right. My wife and I make love in the hotel room. We watch trashy television in the room after. There's something transcendent about basking in the after with mindless TV. And that's so I that was another one where it struck such a nerve where I'm like, I do the same thing for some reason whenever for me, like whenever I am lucky enough, to spend some time with a woman, I right afterwards it's like I want to get junk food, I want to put on like reality TV. Like you can kind of put your feet up and there's this almost like you kind of indulge yourself in a like the lower pleasures, right? But there's something really like you use the word transcendent about it. And this is what I mean. It's like the whole piece you wrote, there's no conclusion. I felt there's no, but I'm with you along the whole way, and I'm like living through this writer, in this kind of auto-fictional style.
And that's, I mean, I wrote that because I read Ketchup, and I
Right.
even blamed you for this piece, and I
Mm.
blamed Sam Pink for this piece. And I don't want to keep talking about myself on my own podcast. That seems kind of indulgent, but Sam Pink Ketchup kind of has that same quality where it's not really going anywhere, right? And it's a little bit longer than, say, a short story, right? Uh, but just because of the way that he kind of formats it gets drawn out into a whole book. But really, if you just take all the different timestamps, right? Because instead of chapters or parts, it's literally just uh, timestamps of his day.
Yeah.
The only thing connecting them really is that they're more or less occurring in, let's say, the same week, even, or at least the same month.
Mm.
Uh, and some of the same people show up, but otherwise they're very self-contained. And you could almost kind of, theory sell your way and say, oh wow, this might be this guy's entire life, even, because it doesn't say this time, this date, this year. Rather, it's just
Hmm.
this time, and he arranges it in such a way that you're like, oh, this must be in the same week. But
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
nothing to say that events don't happen in the past the way that he writes them out. There's nothing to say that uh, everything that's unfolded in this book is unfolding at the same time or in chronological order. Uh,
Yeah, it's very much. Did you? It even. I mean, so this is something I wanted to ask you about because part of my interest in this book is I've followed Pink for a while now.
mm,
And there was a time period where I felt you could just write about the world and it was like whatever. And that now, because we live in this insane, weird bicameral hive mind where there's two distinct cultures that dominate the entire world and everything is run through this strange political lens. I was very interested to see when this came out how he would deal with that,
mm,
as well as the influence of smartphones. I think those are the two big challenges for a writer today is how do you deal with the phones? How do you deal with the culture? How do you deal with the polarization, right? And I want to know your thoughts on that just generally,
it
because your writing is what I understand is your first book is sort of it's science fiction, but your second book is contemporary. Is that right, or is it a period piece?
It's a period piece actually,
Okay,
early
so you
20th
haven't, so
century.
you've shied away from it, right? Which I have too. My first was in 2007. I said it. So I'm curious,
Right.
are you going to write something in the current day? And if you were, how would you approach that? How would you approach that issue?
Yeah, no, that's a tough one. And I think first to answer what I think Pink does, he almost kind of punts at that question as well. You know, like especially he has like the characters that he meets are all older, save for I think the one girl Rose, who I think he's living with, right, or at least lives nearby him.
Nearby, I think. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely like together somewhat. Um, and but otherwise it's almost like he's living in an old folks home kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's got the one World War II vet buddy who you know, shows him his guns, and they kind of they hang out. They have the amputee drunk who, you know, used to be successful. You've got the two ladies who sort of run Pops. Everybody's older, you know. Everybody has aged out of that sort of uh, technological problem that you and I, and even Pink to an extent, face when it comes to
Mm.
writing. Um, let me I'm trying to think of like some of the stuff that I've written, and yeah, I think I pretty much avoid that, unfortunately, and to my detriment, definitely, because it always comes off as just disingenuous, you know.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's disingenuous as much as it's like a pussy move. That is how I feel with my writing, because it's like I feel similar to you, where it's such a difficult thing to deal with because it's so aesthetically revolting and
Mm,
limiting. But it's like a little bit of me is like, well, what's the point of doing this if, you know, it can't be broached in an honest way, or it can't be understood. You know what I mean? Like as a writer, it should be something that you can handle. But I even see this with movies. Like I'll see that the big directors now, you know, you look at like Tarantino, Paul Thomas Anderson, even Wes Anderson to an extent. Like they are these guys who used to make, like, Tenenbaums is contemporary when it
hmm.
came out. A lot of the Tarantino stuff was contemporary. Magnolia was contemporary by Paul Thomas Anderson, and now they only make period pieces. You know, like
Right.
they don't want to
Yeah.
make movies with guys on their phones and, you know, social media. And I get it, again, because it's so aesthetically revolting. But it's that to me is like the big challenge for any movies, authors, whatever, is like, can you pull that off? Can you make something that is like exists in this world but also doesn't like succumb to it, isn't imprisoned by its limitations? You know, what do you
Right.
think?
Yeah. I mean, like, there's oh, what's that film? Her, by starring Joaquin Phoenix with
Mm.
what's her name as the voice, and it's directed by Spike Jones, right? And that's sort of a near future contemporary slash science fiction story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not you know, it's not so advanced that the world is foreign to us, right? We recognize everything that's going on in it. Like, you know, of course, there's an AI girlfriend who gets, you know, somewhat conscious. You know, of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's a video game that you can project on your wall and play sort of on your head. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it you've watched that movie, and you know, some people like it, whatever, but I think it's horrifying. You
Right.
know,
You think it's horrifying or like a bad movie?
no, I think it's a fine, like, well made,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, the content and the film itself and like what it's trying to portray is horrifying to me. And I think that's the problem, is that the future, let's say, at least in my opinion, is bleak and horrifying.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. It is. Yeah. I mean, we
So
could.
you can write horror, like Zero HP Lovecraft
Uh-huh.
writes horror in the like futuristic eldritch horror, let's say,
Hmm.
right? And it works well because it's revolting in a certain sense, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't know. It could be a skill issue, as the kids say. I'm just not very good, but they're the best directors in Hollywood see this problem as well and are nostalgic for a world that they helped destroy.
Absolutely. That's really well said. I remember watching another guy I'm a big fan of, who was a big influence for me, was Harmony Korine, who many people think is just full of shit, and that's fine. But I think he's incredible.
Who
And
isn't?
you're right. And I don't know if you've ever seen his movie Kids from the early '90s or heard about it.
I've never heard of this guy, honestly. Uh,
Okay, so his big movie that was popular was Spring Breakers. You probably have heard
oh,
about,
okay,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which was like marketed as this, Disney actors get their tits out type of popular big budget film, but was actually a very kind of art house
Yeah,
sensory experience. But his
with
first movie,
Disney girls who get their tits out, like
right, right. And his first movie, Kids, is basically this plot where two characters in New York City in the early '90s, and he talked about this in a Q&A. He talks about basically like he wrote this movie where two characters in the early '90s, one of them gives the other one HIV, and the
mm,
other one has to basically find them to tell them like you have HIV because I just got tested and I have it. And the main plot of this movie is the character navigating the city to try and find him. The whole movie is this navigation and where the navigation ends up and the different locations and the characters. And it's kind of a perfect example. He says, like, if that came out today, they'd just text. They would just
yeah,
give him a call.
it just rematch on Grinder or whatever.
Right, right. Or yeah, or post their profile, draconianly on social media and say this guy gave me HIV or something, right? Um, yeah, so it's like, yeah, I don't know how it's tough, but I do see that as kind of the challenge. And so I think with Ketchup, let's talk about maybe how Sam Pink tries to do that. So I think if Sam Pink was like, if his brain was like destroyed by politics in either direction, which I think he isn't. I don't know what his beliefs are. I don't want to speak for him, but I just don't get the feeling with him like he has this, deranged mind in either direction with regard to politics. If he was a
He's a
Trump
sensible centrist.
or something, or he's just a guy. I mean, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Yeah,
yeah.
like he's not even on the map. He's just flipping burgers. But like if he was one side of it, there would have been a scene where, like for example, Mac is showing him the gun, and he's like, "And just so you know, I'm gonna hold this. I'm gonna keep this thing by my bed in case any illegals break into my house or something." There would have, and he could have played that a scene like that two ways, where he either condemns it, and talks about it. It could have been this book about the filthy racism, of these like Michigan old white people, or it could have been the other thing where he, like overly emphasizes their toughness and their dignity and they're not like these pussy weak liberals, who like could never handle the real America, of flipping burgers and whatever. You know what I mean? And he doesn't do either of those things. But in a way, I feel he does. It's not a criticism, but I do feel like, again, he kind of just avoids the elephant in the room. You know what I mean? Like he just pretends that these um, like suffocating ideologies aren't just draping themselves over everything and pretend, or maybe it's just in his mind it isn't, but you know what I mean? Does what I'm saying make
Oh,
sense?
totally.
Yeah.
In some ways he lives in a bubble, right? Let's
Hmm.
say. But you have to imagine that a small Michigan town of no importance with like one road, and on that road is a diner that is also a bar. You
Hmm.
know, there's everyone, it's so homogenous that those issues never come up. You're too
Mm.
busy living like real life in a sense, because those conversations, those fights over politics or culture or whatever happened 30 years ago.
Mhm.
And everybody's kind of gotten to this stasis. Like Mac is just gonna be Mac until he dies. I forget what's the drunk's name who is annoying.
The '08 guy who lost
Yeah,
everything, or yeah, I
yeah,
forget.
yeah,
I can never remember names. Yeah.
yeah. But he's he comes to the bar. He drinks his vodka soda, right, with a lot of ice, and he annoys the crap out of everybody. But he's part of it. He's part of this community, and
Hmm.
to exercise him, right, or to tell him he's not welcome is to kill that.
Right. Yeah. And the other interesting angle of it is that he's like an outsider, kind
Yep, that
right?
too.
Like
Yeah.
we get the sense early. Well, he says like I know Mac, and that's it. So we get the sense he like he kind of moved here on a whim, or he's
Hmm.
for some reason. That's what I like about it too. Is what he so much of what I like about this book is what he doesn't do. Things
Right.
he doesn't do. Things he omits. Things he leaves ambiguous. I felt in this book like like it feels like a character who's gone through something, or who needed a fresh start, or who um, regrets a way they might have lived, and now they're going somewhere to kind of recalibrate. Was that
Hmm.
your perception
Oh,
also?
definitely. Yeah. And one could say that he's commenting on something beyond the fake and the gay of our current political moment, right?
Mm,
Let's talk about the hollowing out of the American Midwest. Like
hmm.
every story these days, left wing, right wing, whatever, it's you're you're leaving somewhere for a better opportunity somewhere else, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
the hick lib moving to the east or the west coast to make it big, right? To be
Right.
to be away from the suffocating morality of a dying place, you know. And this
Hmm.
is and what Pink does is he looks inward and he says, okay, what does the slow death of middle America look like? And it looks like ketchup.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Sorry. Keep going. Yeah.
there's another book by one of my friends. Have you read the middle? The middle by Caleb Caudell.
No, I've read his short story collection. I've read Novelty. I'm a big fan. I wanna get to know that guy a little better, but I have not read his novel yet.
You should, because that's the same thing.
Mm,
His book is literally about the hollowing out of America, right?
mm.
And that I'd say that's one of the bigger crises of our time, is that everybody is trying to be somewhere else, and we're kind of seeing a reverse of that with, let's say, uh, men of of our disposition,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Where it's all about the homestead life. Everybody wants to have a cabin in the woods and have their trad wife making them
Right.
biscuits while they chop wood and tend to the hogs. And
Yeah, so they say.
they
Yeah,
got
yeah.
50 kids running around, but then you smell
Right.
pig shit for the first time. You're like, oof, let's go back to my email job.
Right, exactly. Or they can't, yeah, they can't, there's not a fucking Cane's chicken fingers within 5
Right,
minutes.
right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and to all the homesteaders out there, I'm not talking about you. Uh, but yeah, no, there's this the, the cities are, especially the major metropolitan areas of this country, and they're growing too. Like I used to live near a smaller metropolitan area, right? Not like an LA. I did live in New York for a while, but not like, top 10 city in America. It's like a top 20, right? And
Hmm.
even that is just getting suffocated by this, everybody's just trying to make it there and plant their flag in a place that doesn't necessarily need more people planting flags, you know?
Yeah, and it's like yeah, there's something very frenetic and like chaotic and mentally unwell about it, like you're explaining. It's this like I need to be leaving constantly and I need to be, it almost feels like there's this weird bug light on either of the coasts,
Hmm.
for like narcissism is the way I feel about it.
Right.
And that's, I think as much as you're right, he does depict this hollowing out of America. He provides an alternative, I feel like, that is endearing, at least. He provides an alternative that's like, it's not the most exciting thing in the world, but again, it is if you have Sam Pink's cool brain. Like
Yeah.
if you, what I mean? It's like if you, it's like wherever you go, there you are. If you go somewhere and, there's not like, yeah, like, whatever, fucking Bad Baby isn't doing concerts there or something, right? Like they don't have like a
Right. Like,
stadium venue, but like
oh,
if
oh
you
no, I'm going to miss the Eras tour.
exactly right, but if you're a human being and you're willing to connect with people, to meet them on their terms, you don't believe you're entitled to necessarily a constant stream of excitement. There's enlightenment, like because the final chapter of this book is him is this kind of surreal, I think I interpreted it right, moment where he's looking at the duck, he's looking at Bedhead, and he experiences this kind of bliss, at the just peacefulness and the way he feels like he's a part of this cell in a larger thing in existence. And then he looks in the water and he is the duck, right? Like he
Yeah.
is this wandering, strangely personalitied figure in kind of the middle of nowhere. But
Right.
it's like very wholesome. It's nourishing. I
Y-
think the depiction.
Yeah. You could also say that the ending is him sort of getting absorbed by the blob that is this community, right? He
Mm-hmm.
becomes part of it. He is now a staple. He is the hot rod and eccentric to add to the rest of the eccentrics and the weirdos
Right.
of this town and that is nowhere and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, that's just, we'll call him Sam for lack of better. That's just Sam. He does he's a math whiz and he cooks the burgers,
Yeah, the math whiz. Yeah,
which is, yeah, it's just
yeah.
great, because it's like you can tell that he probably went to like a state university, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's probably not he probably had like some middle management job even, or like some sales job coming out of college, right? And he probably made decent money, and it probably broke him a little bit. That's the thing.
Yeah.
You never figure out who this guy is, but it doesn't matter because we know who he is now.
Yeah. I don't want to. I don't know him. I don't want to speak for him at all. But I've DM'd with him just a little bit because I was like shamelessly like, "Hey, please check out my book. Like, I'm a big fan of yours." And just
Please,
in
bro,
a
just one more self-public, please.
yeah, yeah, just please. But just in the few exchanges, kind of talking to him about it, he did say one thing that stuck with me where he was like, "I saw the art scene for what it was." That's just one line that I remember where. But that's my sense of him too. I know he's done work in different areas. I think he maybe lived in New York for a while. Again, I have no clue. I don't want to like speak wrong on his life, but anyway, the book feels to me like someone who's they've been through the ringer. Like they know it's not that they haven't like had opportunity or they haven't been able to move to the big city or but it's like they're over it. They're recalibrating. There's something that it wasn't what maybe he thought it was going to be, or it just wasn't the point. It doesn't make you whole, something like that.
And to kind of circle back to what we were talking about before with writing uh, modern people, let's say, who are constantly in their phones. I contend that the best literature is a character study, right?
Mhm.
Whether it's first person or third person, once, like, the plots are more or less the same, right? But if you understand the characters, that's where the gems are. That's where you should be mining for gold. Are the characters and their interactions and their psychology. However much stock you want to put into psychology, that's neither here nor there. But
Mhm.
when people are so atomized that their only interactions with others are via screens, that gets to be a daunting task, because it's not just one, you're reading two characters interacting in a book, right? Now, to make it realistic, you're reading one guy texting on his phone to another person who is texting on their phone, right? And it's back and forth, and you can't describe the pixels or the data going in between these two mediums. You know, there's just so much.
Absolutely.
There's
Yeah.
so much interference, let's say, with the technology, that when you're just trying to read about a guy trying to hook up with a girl, it's much easier to put that in a bar, but that's unrealistic these days.
Right, it is. And like the bar setting is fun because you can talk about the bar. You can talk about how it's a dive bar and it's a little dangerous. Or you can talk about how it's whatever, it's fancy and there's low lighting and you know what I mean? But
and
yeah,
and
you
and
can't.
he's out of sorts, and it's clear that he's not of this, but he needs the girl, he wants to impress the girl, or
Right.
he
Or there's a
wants.
shady character in the corner booth or yeah, you
Right,
get none
right.
of this when you're like trying to artfully depict like yeah, online dating or something.
It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, oh, me and this girl met on Tinder, right? And we're watching a movie and we're chilling, and I'm gonna make my move and she's just in her phone, and I text her a winky face, and then we get at it, like, it's like, because that's what people do these days, is they'll sit in the same room and they'll text each other, they won't even talk. You could go a whole day without
Ugh.
talking to somebody.
They do, and that's what I mean. A lot of auto fiction, which I like, and I want to talk about why I like it. But a lot of it is just like that's another thing I love about Ketchup is there's no dating. There's like no, the experience of trying to date, in 2021 or 2019, whenever it's based, and, which I appreciated because it's so I feel overdone. Like I'm thinking of that book Fuckboy, which I read a bit of and was like, Jesus Christ. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all,
I
but
am not, but I don't read a lot of auto fiction because most of it I find it, like, too self-indulgent.
fair, fair. And so I'll tell you why I like it. But that's an example to me of a book where it's yeah, I mean it's completely self-indulgent. It's just this like low affectation. Oh, I'm gonna like hit up my side hoe and like I don't even care and like I message her, but it's just this. It's like you know what I mean, and it's marketed as this like oh, it's capturing the moment. It's capturing the 20s or it's capturing the. But it's just it's so lazy and uninspired. There's no blood in it. There's no. But again, I mean, I
There's no
don't.
stakes, like
Yeah.
you can say that the 1920s, right, to take an example, is captured in Gatsby,
Hmm.
and stuff actually happens, but you're also remarking on the mindset of the time, right? Or the 50s, you could say, is Revolutionary Road, right?
Mm.
uh, or Kerouac, or you know hell, even Hemingway to an extent. Like,
Right, right.
you
Or
can
Henry
cap.
Miller, or
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
a kind
yeah,
of auto fiction. Yeah,
yeah. Tropic of Cancer is definitely a sort of auto fiction.
yeah.
I was even what was it? Hunger by Newt Hampson. I was talking to some guys about the other
Hmm.
day, the episode before this one, right? And that even is a sort of auto fiction, right? But Hampson is so entertaining, and the nameless character, let's say, is going on this journey that you are just bought in, because he's not only capturing, let's say, the late 19th century, right? He's he's doing something timeless. Like
Hmm.
the thoughts he's having, young men are having today and are going to have tomorrow, right? And something about this pervasive hookup culture. Honestly, part of it's voyeurism, in my opinion. Like, do you remember
Right, right.
what's his name? I hope they serve beer in hell. That guy, Tucker Max.
No, I'm not
No,
familiar.
whatever, kind of crap, and he's like kind of changed his life, and now I think he is actually one of those homesteader types.
Okay.
But like
Yeah, many such cases.
he was
Yeah.
like a late '90s, early 2000s sort of like he just wrote about all the girls that he banged,
Hmm.
and that's men read that the same way that they read like the smutty pulps of yesteryear,
Hmm.
because it's voyeuristic.
I mean, I don't even mind that. I don't mind if it's hot stuff and it's real and there's blood pumping through it. I'll read some of that shit. My point is like if it's this kind of lazy, like I don't give a fuck type of affectation, then I feel like I'm not interested in it, But if someone in their obsession with whatever sexual conquest captures something voyeuristic about the intensity of male longing and if there's something really real there, fine. Because I mean, I do think that's kind of my thing with autofiction, which we act like is a new thing, but like you explained, is not a new thing. It's been around in various forms for a long time. It's like an easy thing to pick on because it seems to just represent the narcissism of today where writers write about themselves basically. But I think it's sort of the only thing left in a sense because like I talked about this a little bit with Jay Burden where it's like a movie is just more visually descriptive than a visually descriptive book could ever be, you know? And like the way photographs kind of made certain types of painting a little bit anachronistic. I feel like something like Ketchup, what I love about it is you couldn't make it a movie because you wouldn't. There's no way to make this a
Who
movie.
would care? Who would watch
Right, it would
this?
be the worst movie ever because unless you're in Sam Pink's head, right? Unless there's the style and the thoughts and the affectations and the little slogans that he comes up with, there's nothing there. So it's like it's like what why are we still writing? Like why write a book? It should be because it's the best possible medium to tell a story. And I think you're right. The best what books still are is the best way to tell a story about consciousness, about the thoughts, about a character study about somebody where you're inside their head. There's no movie that's been able to do that yet,
Right.
because that's what the medium can't do that books can do.
Yeah, and film is spectacle. It's
Mm.
things happening. Even good conversation needs interaction. Whereas, Ketchup could have been written about just a guy in an insane asylum, let's say, and he's just in the padded room and he makes up this story, right? But it never leaves the padded room, let's say, but he's just free associating. Like,
Mm.
I think that I think there's even like some weird theater from like the 70s where it's literally just a guy sitting behind a desk telling a story.
Oh, yeah. Is that the Grey's Anatomy? That guy?
Maybe I just that sounds right. The only reason I know about it, do you know that show Documentary Now?
Yes, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's that same guy. I forget his name. Yeah.
yeah, Bill Hader like plays the guy who's just the whole play or the whole documentary is just him free associating, and then it's like people are like, dude, like live a life, stop free associating so much, like you have bills to pay, you know. Um, but yeah,
Well,
so like
I find it invigorating. I enjoy being in someone else's head. I mean,
totally, I'm
I
saying
feel like even, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm saying that it's that medium of if you're literally just sitting in a theater, right,
Mhm.
watching a guy talk and sitting behind a desk and he's not doing anything and you're just supposed to be going on a ride with him. That's very hard to pull off. It's easier to pull off in book form.
Mhm.
And I mean stand-up comedy is kind of like that, but you're also when you go to see stand up or you go to see comedy, you're bought into the concept. Does that, you know what I mean? Like,
Totally. And I feel like stand up is similar, where my favorite stand up hours or my favorite stand up comedians, it's like there's, yes, I my favorite stand ups are the ones who are really funny, but there's also an aspect of I kind of want to like the person telling the jokes, or
right,
not
right,
even like them, but maybe they're a bad person or they're whatever, but there's something about their personality that I buy into. You know,
yeah,
like we were talking a little before we hopped on about Paglia, you know, where it's the ideas and the Apollonian and the Dionysian and all this stuff, but it's also her. It's like the
right,
personality. It's this ferocious, like intoxicating woman, you know, that
right,
you kind of fall into as well.
right. Yeah, and it's like I think the perfect example of this, like the perfect personality stand-up comedian, is Norm Macdonald. Oh, lost you again there, but
Yeah,
I would say
yeah, yeah. Say it again.
I'd say that that perfect personality is Norm Macdonald, and you
Hmm.
know that because people still make Norm jokes. Let's say well past his death, you know, uh, like even and he didn't invent anything like this, right? But like Rodney Dangerfield was his persona. Andrew Dice Clay was that persona.
Yeah.
Lenny Bruce. You went to go see Lenny Bruce because you wanted to go see him get arrested. You know, uh, what's his face? Mr. Warmth. Uh, Don Rickles. Yeah, you went to
Hmm.
go see Don Rickles because you hoped that he would pick you out of the crowd and just tear you apart, but you also didn't want that to happen.
Mm.
You know, so yeah, we like celebrity, and understanding people is part who they are, but part like who they pretend to be. You know what I mean? Like hell, even David Bowie, right? People are infatuated by David Bowie or Elvis, right? Because of the mystique around that.
Mm.
And if Sam Pink does that kind of just writing it down, but he doesn't have to live this lifestyle of like bigger than himself.
That's what makes him, I think, special, is that you buy in and you essentially read the book because you like him and you like his thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and you like the personality, but there's no aspect of it that's self-aggrandized. Like, yeah, there's no spectacle. It's the opposite of spectacle. You buy in because of sort of how like minute and weirdly zen and like transfixing he is, despite the lack of spectacle.
And that's, I think he's in some ways like the perfect Twitter poster, but he doesn't have to post at all.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I learned quickly is if you want people to read your stuff, you need to sell a brand of poster, right? That way, because you're writing, and that's great, but people care about personalities. They want to support quote unquote content creators, which it's cringe because I want to be an
Ugh.
artist, I want to be a writer,
Right.
but
Yeah.
everything is content, and you're just, I mean, hell, what we're doing right now is me churning out content so people will buy my fucking magazine, you know
No,
like,
I feel the same way. Yeah,
and
totally.
I might as well try and do that in a way that I can live with myself. So I'll talk about literature with people who I find interesting, but like, it's
Yeah.
all the same crap. I might as well be doing unboxing videos for my fifth PlayStation.
I
And
know I have no fucking answers to this problem, but because I'm in the same way. I like hate Twitter and I
right,
hate social media and I think it's terrible. But I want people to read my stuff because I
right.
worked hard on it. I think it's really good. You know, so what do you do? What do I
Yeah.
do besides like, yeah, do I maybe I should do fucking maybe I should follow people around the mall and bark at them like those crazy TikTok teenagers. I don't know. You know, like, yeah,
But
there's no, you want to be able to just focus on the work and be able to have some bureaucrat handle that side of the business,
right.
right? But that is done. That is
There
over for
was
us.
there was a fake Cormac McCarthy. Before he passed, there was a fake Cormac McCarthy account created, right? And this was before Elon took over, right? And like you could be banned for impersonating somebody, right? And it's just so imagine like somebody like imagine 90 something year old Cormac McCarthy, and he's tweeting, he's like, I've been told that I need to create this account in order to engage with my readers. Are you happy now, Terry? And like Terry's his publicist or something, like it's just one of the most perfect tweets I'd ever seen. And I wished it was real, but thank God it wasn't.
Right.
And it's like, you know who's really good at this, right? And outside of all the disparaging things I said about playing this game, right? But Dan Baltic, do you know Dan?
Oh yeah, Dan. Yeah,
He
I'm
is
familiar.
he is
Yeah.
amazing at
Well, and
getting.
he's great at it. Sorry, yeah. Explain why he's great, then I'll explain why he's great.
Yeah. No, well, Dan's great because he's handsome and amazing, and we love him. Great friend of the show. No, but he's great because his Twitter persona exists as a compliment to his work, but also outside of his work. You are
Bingo.
following Dan for Dan, right? And then you buy his book because you like his horny posting on the timeline, and you listen to New Right and he's completely different on New Right, which is his podcast, which you guys should go listen to if you aren't. But he's you're following Dan for his jokes on the timeline, and then you're engaging with his deeper work because he's an interesting person.
100%. And it's easier, I think, said than done. That's why I think he's remarkable. Is like, it's easy to say, yeah, you have to have a persona and you have to create a character and you have to, but it's hard. And 99% of them flop and you never hear about them. And the great thing about Dan is the persona is hilarious.
Yeah.
And it perfectly accentuates his writing, which is, yeah, he nailed it.
Like even his junior associate posting, that has taken on its own life. So like friends of ours have a Substack that is just anonymous fiction as if they were working for Dan Baltic's law firm, and they are junior associates at Baltic and Baltic.
Well, and I love it too, because what I hate about Twitter is I'm sick of the fucking discourse, which is also what I like about Sam Pink. And what I like about Dan is, yeah, I mean, he's engaging a little bit, but the way he does it is not really serious. I'm not seeing the same opinions and the same like links and the same charts. Like he turns it into a theater bit. He turns it into, everything is seen through this lens that is comical and funny and a big sketch. And so I don't feel that sense of impending exhaustion, that you feel with 99% of the rest of the fucking world.
I'm trying to find the tweet that he posted yesterday that was just perfect.
Yeah.
So you keep talking for a second while I scroll and find this thing.
You know what? How about can I read a little passage from Ketchup that
yes,
just
kind
of on what we're saying? Okay. So yeah, there's so many parts I think are great about this book. To me, the climax, the funniest parts are the end when he is trying to catch the duck and the woman is trying to catch it and she is in the quote huntress position. That killed me.
Yeah.
But then the next part where he goes he wakes up, he can't sleep, he goes to the convenience store and he's talking to the sword guy. To me, this passage is kind of the book. This is kind of what I love about Sam Pink. I feel there's
the sword guy was so good.
Yeah, you want to go with the Dan thing first, then we'll
no, go ahead. Please.
Okay. Yeah, so this is what he says. He says, Denny talks about the plastic light-up sword for a long time without me responding. I sort of just absorb it. Because I like Denny. Denny's cool. Don't get me wrong, he's fucking annoying sometimes, sure. Very, very annoying. But overall, he's pleasant to be around. That's all I need anymore. The pleasure of presence. That's it. I don't want to talk about anything. I don't have any ideas. I don't need to be right. Not looking to hang some shit on someone else or have some shit hung up on me. Just want to exude the pleasure of my presence and the pleasurable presence of another. That's it. Sue me. And I love that sue me line because it feels like a slight, again, I don't know what he intends. I'm not him. But it feels like a slight, the sue me, like where you say, if you ever tell someone like, I don't care about politics, or I'm just not interested in this issue you're screaming about, there's this kind of, like you have to participate, you have to pick a side. And that Sumi line is just like, listen, I don't have any fucking ideas anymore. I'm exhausted. All I want is to enjoy someone else's presence. I want a real human connection with this gas station guy with a bunch of swords in his trunk. And that's where I'm at in life.
Right.
And to me, that attitude is like strangely revolutionary, I feel, in this time.
No, then because I finished the book last night, and when I got to that part, I was like, I've met so many different like convenience store 7-Eleven guys, right? And I would just be passing through, and either they would strike up conversation or I would strike up conversation, and it sticks with me because it's just so not even random is got a bad connotation these days, right?
Yeah.
But it's just so refreshing because I'll never see that person again. But hopefully I made just as much of an impression as they did, right? Like I'm talking about, let's say Bobby, who I met at the 7-Eleven, and he told me about his time in the army when he broke his leg, and that's why he's, shorter on one side of his body than on the other.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And this happened to be at like 4 a.m. when I was, driving from so-and-so to somewhere else, like just there's something refreshing about that.
Truly.
And it's never going to get captured it's captured on this stupid podcast now, but it won't be captured in a TikTok or a reel or an Instagram photo or even a Facebook post. There's something nice about it not being forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But now, of course, I told the story somewhat without kind of doxing myself, and now it is forever.
Right.
But there's something nice about not forever.
Yeah, it's real life. The concept of forever, that's the scary thing we've all invented now. But this is just how life used to be.
So Dan's perfect tweet
that
I mentioned before was yesterday. I had a high school girlfriend, so I'm never going to be able to understand many of you. But in the fashion of Caesar, I will nevertheless be your companion. Perfect Dan Baltic tweet. That just that is him, And
perfect.
If you dig that, you dig Dan. So you're gonna listen to his podcast, you're gonna buy his book, you're gonna subscribe to his Substack, and you're gonna you're gonna want more Dan.
Yeah, my favorite personally, and I feel this in my bones, and it exposed me and many others, is where he writes, I believe people should have really traditional moralities. Not me, of course, because I'm more intelligent. I'm kind of aristocratic and above all that, but I think all of you people should.
But at the same time, it's like, one of the reasons that, one of the reasons that stuff is so horrible these days is because the plebs have gotten have destroyed morality, and they're too fat and ugly to really dig that. Even I don't know what your position on Bronze Age pervert is, right? But he even writes about the seedy parts of cities, and part of surviving in the world is being a pirate or being a criminal or engaging in these less than, let's say, moral activities, right? But he does it in a way that is intriguing and attractive. But if you see, a ham planet in a polycule, ugh. Ugh.
Right.
You're
but then on the other hand, it's like you want to judge, right? I mean, I feel it's a psychologically revealing concept because you want to judge constantly. But I mean, at least I feel this way. It's like when I'm put in a certain position where I could act like a fucking prophet, or I could be really virtuous. Do I always act that way? Or do I in some way think that because I am like more aware of these ideas, I can do whatever the fuck I want, right? And then basically impose them on other people, which is, I do think, the way a lot of people deep down actually feel.
So it's also okay. Ryan Gosling in Drive is a
Mm-hmm.
vibe, right? Like to again borrow from the kids, right? He's a vibe, he is a mood, he is an aesthetic, right? But if you wear a 3XL leather jacket, right, with a scorpion on the back, and you're walking through a food court at the mall, and you have a toothpick in, and you have glasses and a lot of acne, you're not, you don't look better because you try to look like Ryan Gosling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you would be better off looking like yourself. Like you,
Yeah, and
I
I feel that's sort of to bring it back to the book. Honestly, I feel like you explained what's great about the Denny character is that he's not the Gosling guy. He's not the guy putting on an affectation to look cool for someone else in the pursuit of self-actualization. He's someone who genuinely likes swords. He genuinely likes plastic swords or whatever the swords he has. And that's the realization Pink has is he's like laughing. He's trying not to laugh. And then he's like, wait, I'm the guy who's a fucking loser. Like this guy sincerely likes swords. He actually has something he's passionate about. It's not an affectation. It's not something that he's just collected from popular media to seem cool to somebody else. Denny's real. Denny's a real human being, you know?
he's real, and he's, yeah, I mean, he's unapologetic, you know. He is
Yeah.
himself. He is, and he's got something figured out that you don't, right, as the reader.
Yeah. A mixture of styles, as
You know,
Sam Pink writes.
even something that the main character, who we're reading it because we think he has something figured out.
Mm.
So it's like, you know, if the Buddha or the Dalai Lama was walking down the street and he saw a homeless guy just chilling, and he's like in awe of this homeless guy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you're like, what does he see that I don't see? I
No,
don't know.
totally. Yeah.
Interesting to think about. So I mean, I think we've pretty much exhausted Ketchup without, because I feel like if I keep talking about it, I'll ruin it. You know, it's like,
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think part of the book is that I honestly think we analyzed it as much as you should because
yeah,
part of it is just a painting. It's not something that needs to be, torn at until all the threads are pulled out.
if you smell the flower for too long, you ruin it.
Totally. Yeah.
And this book is the experience, which is very hard to do. So from a technical aspect, Sam does a fantastic job. You know, style, uh, word usage, the way that he formats the page, all great stuff. I definitely recommend, and it's something that I didn't copy but tried to copy. Does that make sense? Because I think you did something similar in your book,
No,
which
totally.
you
Yeah.
got the feel for it without plagiarizing his thing, which is like,
Yeah, well, I think you have permission to plagiarize his thing if you do it right because his thing again is like making the personality of the narrator, which doesn't have to necessarily be you exactly, but making the personality of the narrator the sort of point of the book, making the connection with the narrator the prime thing. And I think, yeah, I tried to do the same thing with mine where um, it feels very much like being in someone's head. It feels very much like getting to know somebody. And there's really not much that happens. There's not much plot, but there's this kind of rhythmic um, living within someone else's consciousness, right? These beats of like thoughts, random thoughts, right? Just in a different setting. So yeah, I was very influenced, and I'm a big fan.
so Adam, where can people find you? How can they support you? What is your Dan Baltic-esque marketing strategy so people will go on your timeline and be like, oh, I want to support this guy?
I have nothing. I don't tweet ever because I hate it and I'm bad at it. I'll never be as good of a tweeter as Dan, so why even try? But you can find my book, Mixtape Hyperborea, on Amazon. It's a labor of love. Please check it out. Um, yeah, and a couple shout outs. I want to shout out ARX Han, another writer I'm adjacent to, who I just think is doing incredible stuff. You can read his Substack, Decentralized Fiction, and find his stuff there. We already talked about Dan and the Sidebar guys. I think maybe you've mentioned them before, but yeah, Cap and Gabe and David, they're doing a great job of talking about kind of emerging alternative literature, that you're not going to just hear about on Oprah's book club. So check them out if you want to, get some good recommendations.
Yes, they are one of the podcasts of all time.
They are.
No, I like those guys. Big fan of what they're doing, and you definitely should follow. I think they are at Tukey's Mag on YouTube, right? And they have the Sidebar podcast.
Yeah, I understand there was maybe some disagreement about one of the double dealers, but again, as I look out at these bimbos at the country club, they're all reading it. They all have their feet up by the pool. So what do they know?
All these bimbos can't be wrong.
They can't be wrong. Yeah, it's taken over.
If you're listening to this, you know where you can find me. I have books. You should definitely support the Double Dealer. Without them, there would be no Canon Fodder podcast. You can buy our magazines. J.L. Mackey is putting all of his fiction exclusively on our Substack, and he's putting his novella, Cowboy Church, behind the paywall. So if you want to read that, you can subscribe to us. You can watch us on YouTube, all that good stuff. I have not yet gotten, it's 16 episodes of this, and I haven't gotten better at ending these things. So until I do, we'll just end it right here.